Hey everybody, it's Amarachi here. Welcome to the Playing with Portals YouTube channel where we discuss all things spiritual, intellectual, and things of that nature. Thank you so much for joining me. It has been a while since we have been back, but no worries here. We are diving right in and we are continuing our discussions on understanding our family lines and using that knowledge to do better. Today, we are going to be focusing on the maternal line, which is what we inherit from our mother, these non-physical traits that we get from not only our moms, but also the relatives on our mother's side as well. Let's get started. Also, a quick disclaimer here, as I've said in previous videos, this is simply speaking from my experience, things I've seen, things I've learned, things that I have felt in my own body, patterns that I've seen in my own life, and that patterns I have seen in the lives of other people around me. I speak from my experience, okay? So if what I put out does not resonate with you, that's okay. There are so many channels, so much information on the internet. You simply just have to keep searching for who works best for you and your journey. Okay. And once again, I'm not claiming to be some sort of expert or some sort of I have all the knowledge in the world. It doesn't really, that's not the goal here. It's to share what I go through, what I know, and hopefully use that to empower others. All right, now let's get started for real. Any discussion on the maternal line has to start with why our moms are important, right? From a physical, biological standpoint, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but we come from women, right? Our mothers birth us, right? So we are literally in our mother's womb. We spend this intimate time with her, and before we make our physical debut out into the world. On top of that, there are certain aspects of our DNA that we only get through our mom, and that is our mitochondrial DNA, right? So our mothers and this maternal lineage is very powerful for so many reasons. One thing that hopefully I'll be able to talk about a bit more is epigenetics and this idea of non-physical traits being passed down as well, and environmental and behavioral things also impacting you. So hopefully we'll get into that later on, but epigenetics certainly also plays a role into to what we get from our mothers and how our mothers' histories affect us. So while we certainly, it's no secret that we can get our physical traits and physical features from our moms, right? So for me, I a lot of people tell me I look just like my mother, right? We have similar cheeks, right? From my mom, I also get my nails, right? My mother has great nails, and I'm always grateful to her for that, right? Um, with other people in my family, right? They have other traits from my mother as well. When I look at some of my uncles and aunts, they fare my grandmother, right? So it's all a beautiful process to see that physical resemblance with our mothers. However, in addition to the physical traits we pick up from our moms, we also pick up non physical traits, right? And this has been a resounding theme that we've been talking about, the non physical things we pick up from those around us and we pick up in our family lines. Part of better understanding yourself, strengthening yourself spiritually is to know the origin of things, is to know where things are coming from. So, one, you can identify whether or not that thing is helpful, but two, you can identify and start creating a process on how to either amplify that trait or, not necessarily get rid of it, but remove it, shall we say. So when it comes to finding the things that we get from our mothers, one of the first things we can do is literally look at our mom's life. All right. So what kind of life did your mother leave? Or excuse me, did your mother lead? So that can literally start from her childhood up until now. Where was she raised? What school did she go to? What was her socioeconomic class? What things does she like doing growing up? Who were her friends? How many siblings does she have? And of the siblings, what order is she in? How many were sisters? How many were brothers, right? These are the things that you can start asking about your mom because as you piece your mother's story together, you will start to see some similarities in your own story as well. Another great thing to do is also ask how your mother was raised, right? So you can ask from a standpoint of, was she a city girl or was she a country girl? But you can also ask, was it a stricter household or was it a more free flowing creative household? Was it a single parent? Was it two parents? Was there a divorce? Was there a remarriage? All of these things are part of your mother's story, right? The reason why it's important to know your mom's story is because something in there, right, has shaped her, or actually all of it has shaped her into who the woman she is today. And that has governed her interactions with you, whether both of you know it or not. On top of that, the things that your mother does, they're probably, a lot of it's probably passed down from people even before her, right? So it might be a little more difficult to say, okay, let's go back 10 generations and see what they're doing. So it's easier to start with who's right in front of you, and that's the mom, right? Look at your mom, observe her life, observe how she was raised, and then kind of use that as the first building block to understanding that entire line. Then, once you kind of establish a groundwork for your mother's life, the next step is to go, what sounds like me, right? What sounds like something that I've also inherited, something that I also do, all right? So, for example, my mom is really good at painting. She's very artistic. She's good at drawing. She's very artistic. She's very creative. She likes putting creative projects together, right? As I've gotten older, I can see that in myself as well. So when it comes to, for example, interior design, putting together a room, things like that, I see that in myself. And I see my mom. Growing up, my mom used to always have visions for how to put things together, right? She always knew how to arrange things very well. When it came to hosting a family events, she was very, big on this is how it has to look because she saw it in her mind that way. So now when I look at it, I'm like, I also really like event planning and putting things together and curating experiences through events. I could say I get a lot of that from my mother. Another thing I get from my mom is my love of food and cooking. My mom is also a very good cook. So I also have an affinity towards cooking and using cooking and putting food together as a way not only to tell stories, but as a form of creativity and a form of stress relief, even. And so I see that in my mom's story, and now I see it in mine. So I can say, looks like there is something there. Looks like that is a trait that I got from my mom. So now I can use that as a building block to say, okay, do I see this in other family members on my mother's side? And then from there, we can then build a concrete statement that this is something I get from my mom. Once you kind of get an understanding of your mom's life and you see what parts of her are in you, right? You then start expanding that to other people in her family. So for example, if your mother is one of four, I would then look at your mom, then take her three other siblings, look at them, maybe not as in depth, but like, what do they like doing? What do they say? Are there any phrases? Are there any mannerisms that they possess that your mom also possesses that you possess? And then you can start picking a story together, right? So, for example, on my mom's side, I mentioned cooking. I mentioned um, uh, uh, drawing as well. So we do have cousins on my mom's side that are really artistic too, and that is then a key to me that this gift of drawing, of artistry, of creativity is a family gift from my mother's side that's now in me. So now I can see that as a trait that I get from my mom, and I see that this gift is in the family. So that means that's part of the family purpose, right? That's part of the family lineage. That's part of our craft. That's part of who we are. Is we are creatives. You can also take it a step further by looking at a pecking order, right? So is mom the oldest, the middle child, or the youngest, right? And because that also forms part of the story as well. And then you can compare that to your pecking order. Are you the oldest, youngest, middle child? And then that also can play into mannerism. So, for example, if you're the oldest and your mom is the oldest, there might be a certain demeanor that you both share from being the oldest, right? There might be a way in which y'all both solve problems as the oldest child, right? So, that's another angle to add to that too to further complete the puzzle. Now, as you look at your mother and her line, one thing that's helped me is I also assess the personalities of people on that side. And what I mean by that is your personality and things you do might not always neatly line up with your mother, but it might be someone on that side that you line up with, right? So, for example, let's say your mother has three sisters. You and your mom, we have some similarities. But when I really look at my mom in comparison to Auntie Doe or my mom in comparison to Auntie Love, right? I find that me and Auntie Love have a similar disposition and a similar way to approaching things. We joke in a similar manner, we talk in a similar manner, we have similar hand movements and things like that. And it might be that the person on your mother's side that you get a lot of traits from, right, or you share a similar story with, might not be your mom, but it's still coming from that family side. You see what I'm saying? So it's not always going to be everything from your mom is going to line up with you. You might get other things from other relatives, or you might resonate with other relatives more. But the reason you start with your mom is because that's your gateway to that side. And then from there, you might find, hey, there's this relative 2, 3 generations back who has like basically the same interests as I do, who I find that, I'm really into journalism, and I found that this relative was a journalist, right? My mom herself might not be the journalist, but it's in that side. It's coming from that side, that creative side as well, right? So once again, if you're finding that, oh, when I do a kind of analysis with my mom, it doesn't neatly add up, it's okay. It's supposed to be the gateway. It's supposed to start opening things up for you. Once you kind of get a flavor for the personalities, and you get a flavor for, your mom's life and your life in comparison, you want to start not just looking at things like personality and mannerisms. You also want to look at things like, how do y'all handle conflict? Okay, that's a big one. How do you express emotions? That's a big one. How do you handle money? That's a big one. How do you uh, um, react when you feel disrespected? How do you uh, um, what kinds of people are you attracted to romantic partner wise? Is there a similar archetype that it seems like, oh, the woman on my mother's side tend to go after men like this? The men on my mother's side tend to go after women like this, or the women go for women, or the men go for men, whatever who they're attracted to. Regardless, it doesn't always have to be the binary. That was just an example, right? So you just want to then you use the personality in my mom's life, and my mom was born here and she did this. That's the first step out. But then we want to start looking at, hey, when it comes, how do we deal with anger? How do we deal with pride? How do we deal with jealousy, right? Are there a lot of jealous women on my mom's side? What is that about? Are there a lot of divorces on my mom's side? What is that about? Are there a lot of people who shut down during conflict? What is that about, right? You want to start then getting to these deeper questions so you can understand the origin of why you kind of do things the way you do, right? And then when we want to shift over even to another segment, when we want to talk about health from a physical standpoint, right? This is where, when you go to the doctor and they ask, do you have a history of X, Y, and Z diseases? You want to also start using this time to figure that out. Hey, there seems to be a trend of neurological disorders in on my mom's side. There seems to be a trend of arthritis, or of bone issues, or of gut issues, right? People having various gut issues, or high blood pressure, right? Or I've met people who said, bipolar disorder runs in my family. Bipolar runs on my mother's side, right? So now you want to start looking at these things and going, okay, what are the emotional trends on this side? What are the physical trends on this side, right? And you want to write this down. Write this down, pay attention to it, and that becomes your foundation and your blueprint for opening up and understanding your mother's side. All right. So I can't wait to continue this conversation. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you all here again. See y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.